Hello and welcome to Almost 30 Podcast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is Lindsay Simsick and my best friend, Krista Williams. We are coming to you from New York and Los Angeles, and we're so happy you're here. Maybe you're in your late 20s, early 30s, going through your Saturn return, which is why we started this pod. But maybe you're an OG and you've been with us this entire almost 8 years. It's crazy. We're happy you're here. We're here to support you just as you evolve. We talk about everything from spirituality to health and wellness and more. And today we're getting into the more science of things with a conversation.
We got Nicole Neuroscience on, so you can follow Nicole on her amazing Instagram account, Nicole Neuroscience. Nicole Vignola, she wrote the book Rewire. Break the cycle, alter your thoughts, and create lasting change. I love the cover. I love the book. It's so easy to read, so easy to digest. I just kind of leaf through it in the morning to just get a little bit of information in neuroscience in my life. And in this conversation, we talk about breaking bad habits. We talk about anxiety. We talk about reprogramming your subconscious. We talk about how to alter your thoughts so they're more positive, to have a more positive outlook on life. We talk about the negativity bias. It's all these juicy things that so many people love talking about right now, especially online as it relates to the brain. And Nicole is such an expert. We had so much fun in this conversation. So I think y'all are really going to love it.
I recently had an experience. My husband and I rented a house for a few days. We just wanted to get out of the city, and just talking about like rewiring your subconscious. I was so excited to be in this house because one, I chose it and it's my aesthetic, but two, I was really curious to see how I would feel in a home, because I do know that like that will be something that we'll be creating for ourselves in years to come. But it's felt so far away, and I really haven't allowed myself to kind of feel what it would feel like. And it was so wild. When I walked into the house immediately, like Sean looked over at me, he's like, you are at home. Like something just changed. And I was like, I know, I felt it. Like just this sense of ease. And I think it's like the ability to flow within a space, the windows, like you could see nature 360. I was just like, oh, these things are important to me. And I think it's easy to forget what's important to you when you're kind of in the day to day and in your space now. I love my space now, but it's certainly not going to serve us forever. And so I just thought that was fascinating. And it really took me kind of getting out of my comfort zone, setting up these few days, hauling a baby all the way out there, but then settling in and being like, wow, like there was a part of me that knew that I needed this, and a part of me that also knew that I needed to feel into this moment that's going to be my reality soon, so that I could kind of shift maybe my negative loop on the daily of like, I don't have enough space. I have like no storage here. I walk outside and there's construction happening across the street. And I think what it did for me was kind of lift the weight of the day to day of like, are we ever going to be in a house, to like, wow, this is possible. I know this is possible. And it's already opened up conversations with Sean and I. So all that to say, I had not realized that like my kind of negativity bias was getting the best of me as far as like my very near future dreams go. And so to break out of that, to have like a step into a future moment just felt so good and totally rewired something in my brain.
Yeah, that's huge. I don't think or maybe we do, but I think when you get older, you really realize how much a space has impact on you. And I think when we're living in a city, we can sort of normalize all the things, the sounds, the sights, the smells, the experience of being fully turned on at all times. But throughout history, that hasn't been the preference of our bodies, to be in cities, to be in these types of really loud environments. Even where I live is really loud. and it's very normal to me now, but it's definitely not my body or energy's preference to be around loud noises all the time. And so when you're able to go out in a space like that in nature, and I know we spent time in Hudson Valley too, it just like cleanses you, it purifies you, it grounds you, it shifts you in a way that feels so natural and almost feels like, how could you live any differently? You know, you're like, how could I do my life any differently? Why would I not be in this place? But then we always go back to the city. We always go back to the places, you know, that we come from. But it's important from a brain rewiring perspective to have those like touchstones of moments and places that you can go back to as like your expansive moments, as those like mental images, as those feelings. So you can really move into that from a more regular basis. I have like a memory bank of memories that I pull and draw on to feel them in my body. You know, times I've been on stage, times I've been doing things that felt really aligned for me, conversations, relationships. And so that feeling I can generate in my body, and then I can pull up a different mental image of like my future partner, my future home, whatever the thing is, to have that brain body connection of that feeling that I want with the new image that I'm creating. So I think that's huge. And it's really beautiful that you were able to have that, especially when it's so possible for you. Like it's not a stretch. It's like very normal. It's very much on the way. And it's just such a nice thing, especially, you know, when you have a family, to have that like nurturing space to be in.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, just to see Mav like be able to, I mean, he was taking laps, just exploring so much space, and then to be able to like open the sliding door and he just went outside. I was like, oh, this is that shit. And you could see him, like we would go outside in the morning and he would hear the birds, and it's so quiet, but it's like nature sounds, you know, it's different. And he doesn't, I think he's very adaptable. However, like you see the difference, you know, when he's in nature, and it's just so sweet. So yeah, that was definitely a moment. And the final thing I'll say, just related to the brain, I've had to give myself a lot of grace over the last like 11 months since giving birth and breastfeeding. The energy that breastfeeding takes from your brain is kind of crazy. And I felt really foggy. I felt really dumb. I felt like I'm not functioning at the level that I would love to be. And a light bulb went off the other day because I read something about the energy it takes to breastfeed, especially related to your brain function. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I get to do this. So glad. But I'm also, I forget that I am not functioning at the level that I used to. So just giving myself a lot of grace too. Anyway, just wanted to say that for breastfeeding moms out there.
Yeah. You're like, ladies, It's not just you. It's a lot of mental load, which is something. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this section of her book, Nicole's book, who's on the podcast today, Rewire, which I really loved. And it's in the chapter Ditch the Negative on page 70. And she talks about mental currency. So she talks about how her research investigated how we allocate mental energy resources on things like social media, which is something that we engage in quite often with this perceived idea that we're taking a mental break from work. But our brains actually have a limited capacity for daily energy expenditure and therefore have limited energy resources. So activities such as working, studying, problem solving, and this important higher order thinking can lead to increased energy consumption. You know, when you work all day or do podcasts or whatever it is that you're doing, it's increased energy consumption, which can lead to mental fatigue. And so the problem is that when we use social media during our work breaks as a form of distraction, thinking that we're giving our brains a break, our energy resources are in fact still being allocated to something that is mentally taxing. So this can lead to cognitive overload, a state where the mind is overwhelmed by excessive information or stimuli, hindering our brain processing. So in our digital age, constant data influx from sources like social media can lead to mental fatigue, impacting decision-making and overall cognitive function. So that scrolling that we do when we're taking a break, kind of stopping from work, having lunch, whatever the thing is actually really taxing on our brain and just giving us this cognitive overload that I think is causing people a lot of stress, anxiety. It's causing our brains a lot of fatigue. So as much as we can, taking a break without social media or our phones in general, even giving our eyes a break and rest from all the processing of stimuli, because most stimuli processing happens through the eyes, around 80% of it. So really just spending as much time off of our phone as we can is always the thing, but especially if we think we're taking a break, just putting the phone down.
Yeah. Oh my God. I feel it. I'm sure a lot of people feel it. It's hard to break the habit because it feels so good to dirty scroll. You know what I mean? Like you flop in bed when you have like 15 minutes, you're like, let me dirty scroll. But I feel it's almost like my brain like splits into as many Instagram profiles as I'm looking at, on my feed. Like it's like that. It just looks like string cheese. And then to go back to whatever I was doing, whether it's work or with Mav or whatever it is, it's like, it's hard to come back. It's hard to retrieve all of those parts of my brain that feel like they're just floating in the ether.
Yeah, it's such a waste of our mental load and space. And when we go from task to social media back to task, it takes us way longer because of the residue to actually focus on the task. So as much as we can, being off of it, I would love to do that more. I would love to kind of kick the habit of the automatic scroll, the automatic checking. When I was working with someone for my social media, it was really helpful because of that, but I'm not doing that anymore. So yeah, it's such a struggle, but I take a nap every day, so that also helps. So instead of scrolling, I'm napping, which I know not everyone can do. So, but naps for me help.
Yeah, heck yeah. Yeah, I think, our audience has always been really fascinated with the science behind things. So this conversation is going to be super helpful in understanding our brain, just how our, whether it's decision making, how we relate to people, how we, bring manifestations into our life and how that's related to our thoughts and our negative biases. So I think this is going to be super, super helpful.
Yeah, Nicole's amazing. She's a neuroscientist and organizational consultant. She specializes in making neuroscience tangible for the masses. So she has a really amazing Instagram account, like I shared, Nicole Neuroscience. And then Rewire is her first book. So hope you guys enjoy this one. Share this one with a friend. This is such a good one to start conversation with, to have that like as a touching point between friends, maybe near and far. And it's how we've grown almost 30. So thank you for listening to Almost 30. Thank you, Nicole, for coming on. You're the best. We really appreciate you. Rewire is an amazing book. Truly, I love it. We have Morning Microdose, which is our second channel. It's our second podcast. It's all the clips from Almost 30. It's like the best of the best, the hottest of the hot. And then almost30.com, where you can learn more about Lindsay and I. You can find more of our partner information. We have amazing sponsors and discount codes for you. We have Almost 30 Podcast on Instagram and Almost 30 Podcast on TikTok, where we share some amazing highlights and clips.
All right, y'all. Enjoy this one, and we'll see you on the other side.
See you soon.
I have really been working on improving my health. I just think that there are seasons of your life where you can revisit things you could be optimizing, things you could be not be doing as much of, etc. And part of that for me is, and has been for the last few years, is drinking my AG1 every single morning. I do this before working out, before making my coffee, because honestly, like sometimes I don't even want coffee after I have my AG1. It really starts my day off on the right foot. It makes me feel so energized. It keeps me regular. And I just noticed that it is the start of like a cascade of great choices when it comes to my health for the day. This is a research-backed foundational nutritional supplement. So if you are someone that's like, oh my gosh, which supplements do I take? Vitamins, the pills, the this, like this makes it easy. It is one scoop once a day. I mix it in water. It is delicious. It goes down easy. And it's just so easy to incorporate. They are constantly putting their formula to the test. So many experts that I know in the space trust AG1, medical professionals, backed by research and multiple studies. It's super amazing. And I mentioned before that you might not even need your morning cup of coffee. For 91% of participants in a research study who drank AG1, that was the case. They didn't even really want their coffee. 97% of people in a research study felt more energy after 30 days of drinking AG1. Pretty incredible. If there's one product I trust to support my whole body health, it's AG1. And that's why we partnered with them for so long. Start your journey with AG1. It's a win, baby. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs, which I love, with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/almost30. That's drinkag1.com/almost30. Check it out. Okay, if you're a new parent, a bad day means you either ran out of coffee, diapers, patience, or all of the above. Am I right? Stocking up on cold brew and deep breaths are all you, but at least Hello Bellows got your baby's butt covered. I am so happy that I have my diapers on subscription. Man, oh man. And I love that they are affordable. You know, diapers are in our home and necessary for our babe. And if we run out, we are, you know what, out of luck. But with Hello Bello's ultra convenient diaper bundle subscription service that includes 7 packs of diapers and 4 packs of plant-based wipes, I never run out of supplies, and you won't either. I love that it's delivered straight to my door. I can set, change, and cancel my delivery schedule whenever I want. It is so easy. And, you know, as a new parent, I realize how hard it is to have everything you need at all times and to remember to buy it. It's actually really, really hard. So to have this on subscription, honestly, has made my life so much easier. This is a busy parent's freaking dream. They were named Best Diaper Subscription by New York Magazine and winner of the 2022 Good Housekeeping Parenting Award. I love the designs on the diapers. I love that they are hypoallergenic. They're super soft. They're amazing. So I think you're going to love them. It's kind of like a little cloud on your baby's bum, and the absorbency is great. No leakies here. So go to hellobello.com/almost30 to get 30% off your first customized bundle and a full-size freebie product of your choice. Pretty amazing. That's hellobello.com/almost30 to start bundling with 30% off your first order. Don't forget, that's hellobello.com/almost30.
Nicole, I'm so glad you're here. We were just talking earlier about how serendipitous it was that you came. We were talking years before, and it just so happened perfectly that I saw the email when you were here in town and we got to reschedule.
Yeah.
And I'm just so excited.
Thank you so much for having me, and on such short notice as well.
I know. Yeah. When did I email you? A few days ago?
Yeah, literally.
And I was perfect. I was glad that you got back.
Yeah.
It just happened perfectly.
Well, your automated email said you weren't taking podcasts until September. And I was like, oh, that's a shame. And then I got the email a few days later and I was like, what?
You're like, so they're liars.
Yeah. Well, no, I thought I was special.
You are. It's actually true. We're pretty far scheduled out, but you know how the game goes.
Thank
you know
you.
how the game goes. You have such an amazing energy and presence, and I just really excited for our conversation today. The book is Rewire, which is incredible. And I think there's a lot of ways that our conversation can go. I'm excited to talk about manifestation, visualization, and really understanding the brain. I'd love to talk a little bit about, firstly, the subconscious. I think that's such a relevant and like a word that's kind of getting thrown around quite a bit, where people are understanding how powerful the subconscious is and really wanting to use it in their lives to better their lives. So can you explain what the subconscious is?
Yes. So firstly, I'm not going to be able to use my hands as much. I'm very Italian, so I'm just going to use one.
Yes.
But the subconscious, so when we are growing up, we have this programming. Our brains are highly programmable, and we are absorbing information from our environment, from our peers, our parents, the people around us, the things that people say to us, maybe some bullying. I can actually vividly remember like one of my friend's mums saying that I was a naughty child.
Wow.
I know. I need to call her up. But those things stick with you. And so this programming happens in our developmental stages of plasticity. And what happens during this time is that the brain starts to form beliefs and rules about how the world works based on how your parents interact in the world. we gain observational knowledge by watching them interact with each other around the world. So you learn how to get to school without actually having to be told, and observational knowledge is a great thing for that. But sometimes you also maybe learn to communicate ineffectively because your parents yell at each other. And so you learn that in a mildly stressful situation, you need to raise your voice and blow up and start crying. And I think that that's a very classic kind of subconscious programming. And so we call that automaticity. So the things that you do without thought, you don't think about how you make your coffee or some of the beliefs that you have. You just have them. They're deeply ingrained. We also have something called mental heuristics, and those are shortcuts as to how you arrive to conclusions because your brain is trying to save energy for more cognitively demanding tasks. So the heuristics are essentially mental shortcuts. And that is all to say that the brain wants to save energy for, as I said, more cognitively demanding tasks and having these wonderful conversations, that it's not going to remind you to start using your left hand to brush your teeth or do things differently. That is what's been programmed. And so Rewire is really there to challenge the question, is that programming really yours? If it isn't and you'd like to change it, then you can.
It's interesting because almost 30, we started when we were in our late 20s, and it really was like about the Saturn return. And also what we realized was it was around the time when your prefrontal cortex comes online and you're sort of able to reevaluate the decisions you made, the programming that you have, and sort of your consciousness happens. Can you talk through what I'd like to do is walk through the stages of your brain development and sort of understand like what you were talking about from the beginning. So the subconscious is essentially being developed from the ages like 0 to 7. And then what's sort of happening from there from like a brain development perspective?
So our brain fully develops around the age of 25, predominantly the frontal cortex being the last. And that is why when you're younger, you will know the repercussions of certain behaviors, but you'll decide to engage in them anyway. It's the reason why it's really hard to tell a teenager not to have unprotected sex, etc. I mean, you can do your best, but they know that there are repercussions and that there are risks, but they are more risk averse. Yes.
I know risk. No, it's like risk. Risk averse is like scared. Risk.
Yeah, no, the opposite.
Risk interested. I don't know what they're interested in.
Risk loving.
Yeah, like they're more risky.
They actually get a thrill off it.
Yeah, honestly. It's like you're almost like, I want to do it because of that.
Exactly. And so after the age of 25, we have thereabouts been fully developed, especially the frontal cortex. And that is why we have better kind of control with looking back at our decisions and reevaluating our lives.
Wow. And so prefrontal cortex is really that part of the brain that allows us to make conscious decisions or evaluate logical. Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah. How do you see consciousness? Like, because I think a lot of time when I think about the subconscious mind, it sort of is would you say it is the unconscious part of us that's running? And then a part of the subconscious reprogramming is making the unconscious conscious?
Yes, exactly. And Carl Jung has that beautiful quote, until you make the unconscious conscious, you'll
be run by it.
Yeah, and you'll call it fate. Something like that. It's
wow, I love
quote.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's amazing is that we know that we can now create plastic changes to the brain well into old age. So for a long time, we thought that after the age of 25, that's it. Everything that you know about life, beliefs, and rules about the world are set in stone. But we can change that, which is amazing. So anyone that has been told that they are not good enough or been sent off on a trajectory that says maybe you're, I don't know, supposed to be an engineer or whatever, we can change that.
Wow. For most people that have mostly negative thoughts about themselves, what would be a way that they can use? What would be a way that they could change those thoughts?
Yeah, and negative thoughts about oneself is quite a prevalent thing, I would say. And it's also driven by our negativity bias. So we do have a tendency to focus on the negative, whether it be jumping to conclusions or sometimes you're scrolling on Instagram and you see a photo of hopefully not a friend, but someone you know, and you automatically try and find something wrong with whatever's going on. And I think that's a very common one.
That's a really good point.
You know, and I've spoken about that in the context of seeing your partner's ex. And people always be like, oh, but she's not as pretty, or, you know, and we've got to be really careful about jumping to these negative assumptions because, you know, it can help keep us stuck in a loop of doing that in every area of our life. And that negativity bias can also tell you that you're not good enough and kind of perpetuate this ideology that you are not worthy of receiving a pay rise or be in the position that you're in at your job or start a podcast. And the detriment is that we reinforce these beliefs. We also have a confirmation bias. So not only do we focus on the negative, we then want to go through the day to prove that our statement is correct. So then we start to find proof. You see, that person spoke to me funny, I'm weird, and I'm not good enough. Next, that's proof. And we start to perpetuate and reinforce these patterns that then drive our entire being.
And the negative thoughts, where do they come from? Where does someone's negative perception of themselves, is it from their parents? Is it from the media? Is it innate within us? Where do we get it?
I would say a combination, depending on how you've been raised. If you have been raised by wonderful parents who didn't criticize themselves in the mirror when looking at themselves or criticize their friends, that's a really big one. You've got to be so careful about how you speak in front of your children because they pick up everything. If you were raised in a family that didn't do that, then I would imagine you'd have less of a negativity bias, more of a positive, say, or grateful outlook on life. But I would say that it's an amalgamation of, nature and nurture, mostly nurture. And then the media you consume as well. We have these beauty standards, and if we reel it back all the way to the 90s, I mean, there's like horror reels on Instagram right now showing us how we all went through this phase of having to be super, super skinny and not being good enough for TV all the time.
It's insane.
Wild.
It's insane. I mean, I always think with women, because I work with women a lot on like body image and their relationship to their body. And I'm like, it's actually amazing that we're here.
Yeah.
For what we've gone through.
Yeah. I was watching an old video of Paris and Nicole. I love that show, The Simple Life.
Yep.
And I can't believe that they were saying that Nicole Richie was overweight. I was looking at her. I was like, she literally is like normal.
Absolutely
she was great.
Normal. Like so many women that were absolutely normal were like, and it was just normal to call them fat, normal to call them all these things. Like it was such a constant conversation. And that's something that's huge. And we can even talk about that, as it relates to weight and body. Like a lot of the work that I do with women is actually bringing the unconscious thoughts that they have about their body and their weight to the conscious mind. Because I think what's running a lot of times is waking up in the morning, touching their stomach and not knowing that they're checking to see if it's flat or not. Like having the constant loop of like, how much calories does this have? Do I need to work out? And so how can people start to do that? Because for me, and I want you to correct me or not, what I perceive is that until we're making the unconscious thoughts conscious, you can't really do anything. Would you say that is true? Or how would we go about making ourselves aware of what we're thinking?
Okay, give me an example.
An example would be a woman thinks she's fat and wants to lose weight. What would be the relationship to her subconscious mind and her mindset around that?
Yeah, and I guess we need to bring awareness, because that's step number one.
Yeah.
Until we know what we need to change, it's hard to really know what it is that we need to change. Now, I have a whole chapter or whole phase actually of the book called Phase 1, where I have a neuro toolkit at the end that helps you change these automatic patterns. Now, let's talk about ruminating thoughts maybe. So these thoughts where you wake up in the morning and you think, I'm ugly, I'm fat, etc. Right. So one way that we can break that cycle is intercepting with something. So I always suggest something like the physiological sigh, which I'm sure you would have seen has been popularized by Huberman. So it's an inhale through the nose, another inhale, pause at the top, long exhale through the mouth. Let's do it twice together. It feels so nice. Go. One more. Yeah. That feels really nice.
You can feel it in the brain.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So what that does is it lowers the stress hormones in your body, because when you start perpetuating negativity, your cortisol and your adrenaline starts to rise. When you're in a state of stress, you can't reason with yourself. You can't say, yes, the dress does look amazing, wear it, because you wouldn't be trying to rationalize as to why there's a lion in your vicinity. You would be thinking about running, fighting, or freezing. And so when we're in the state of perpetual negative thinking, our stress hormones are raised. And to try and reason with ourselves then is quite hard. So the body needs to communicate with the brain that we are no longer in a perceived state of threat by doing the physiological sigh, we're essentially fast forwarding that parasympathetic activity where the central nervous system quietens down. Then we can reframe. We can reframe it into something more realistic. A classic one, and maybe you can help me find one for weight related, but a classic one is if you're at work and you think you're not good enough and it's a new job, the logical or the reframe, which is more neutral, it doesn't need to be positive, it just needs to be neutral, where you say, okay, I'm not good right now because it's a new job and I will learn. I don't know if you can help me find one with the weight.
No. The weight one doesn't even need to be, but I love what you said, and I want you to say why. Is like, why did you go to neutral and not positive?
Because we can't slap toxic positivity on that. Our brains just know when we're lying to ourselves. We can't be like, no, of course you look amazing in this dress. It's tight for you. Your brain is going to know that you're lying. So what you could reframe that into is, okay, the dress is a little bit tight. Let's go get another one.
Love that. I love that. That is so true. I think that's such a beautiful point. That's so interesting and fascinating about the human brain, or the psyche, is that you can't lie. Like, I wonder what that is. Like, why can't we lie to ourselves? Like, I always say that with self-love. I'm like, to move from hating yourself to loving yourself doesn't work. It's like you have to move on. Everything's almost like a scale. You have to move from hating yourself to being okay with yourself, to being neutral with yourself, to liking yourself, to loving yourself, because it just doesn't work to go from one extreme to the other.
And what you've described there is essentially repetition, which is what the brain wants. Whatever has been repeated has become ingrained. And it's the reason why it's not you, it's your brain. And if you are dealing with something like negative thinking or self-criticism, maybe that's something that you have perpetuated your entire life by observing your parents do that. And now it's just what the brain knows. The brain doesn't know the difference between right and wrong. It just knows what's been repeated. We are luckily now very conscious human beings. We are the only species on this planet that has something called autonoetic consciousness and the ability to ponder life, etc., and think, about all those wonderful things beyond survival. So we can change those beliefs.
Wow. And so someone that feels genuinely negative about themselves, what's happening is from the subconscious. So from 0 to 7, when the brain is just recording, their subconscious is sort of being primed to think negatively, to think that they're not enough. And then that's sort of running in the background. And then they're sort of just running on those well-grooved neural pathways. And then is that unconscious in their experience until it's made conscious?
Yes. So when you catch yourself, and someone might be listening to this and saying, well, I don't catch myself, but I would like to bet that now that you've listened to this, you'll start to pay attention to your thoughts. And when you do catch yourself, you can intercept, physiological sigh, reframe. Now, over time, and this is one of the sections in the book, is the space between the trigger and the response gets bigger and bigger, where we start to make that decision to think differently, where we can say, hey, this is usually the pattern that I go down because this is what's been reinforced, but I can change this and I'm absolutely going to change that.
There seems like it's with the brain choosing the comfortable thing, the easy thing. It's almost like, what is that where the brain chooses easy, the brain chooses comfortable, we choose easy, we choose comfortable? Is it to save energy? And then we're sort of living in an experience where, because the brain chooses an experience to use less energy, we're not living a life that we love? What is that?
So that's those heuristics I was talking about, those mental shortcuts that your brain takes to arrive to particular conclusions, and the automaticity that's been reinforced. So the automatic processing, it's the same way as you don't really, have you ever had it when you get home and you're like, how the hell did I get here while you were driving?
Totally.
That's kind of what those automatic thought patterns are. They're just on a loop. They run in the background of your life. But you could pay attention to the entire walk by being more conscious and saying, oh, wow, look at that bin and look at that wonderful traffic light.
And I'm like, look at that flower.
Yeah,
I'm looking for cats in my neighborhood.
Well, there you go. So we can choose to pay attention to things. That's the amazing thing about the human brain, is that we have this, it's called a salience network, and it essentially can tell you what's important. So right now, your brain is telling you that I'm important. There is traffic noise outside. Your brain could shift to listen to that and not my words. It's the reason why trying to scroll and watch TV doesn't work, because your attention is being grabbed by something else. In the same way that if something had to drop, our attention would automatically shift to the noise And that's just what your head does until you say, okay, well, actually, that's fine. Let's come back to this. So we have a lot of power in choosing where we want to put our attention.
Wow. What's that called?
Salience network.
Salience network.
Yeah. So salience means importance. So what is important?
Wow. I wonder how that applies to relationships.
In what context?
Because it's almost like in relationships, the person in front of you would be like your salience of importance. It's like how you focus your energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be like the best feeling connection in relationship.
Yes. And it's the reason why I always say just be mindful about how you're scrolling and interacting with each other, because you can end up reinforcing this pattern where you just coexist. And then that's what's familiar to the brain. So now social contact feels weird, or intimacy feels foreign. And then people, drift apart. And drifting apart, can happen anyway. But sometimes we also force it because of the way that we interact with each other.
Totally. With social media, how do you see neuroscience playing a role in social media for people?
I think we need to be careful of social media. I have a very good relationship with social media. I'm very good at being able to say, you know what, this is too much, and I'll switch off. And I barely check my notifications, and I'm like, anything could be happening. I mean, I had a video go viral and the comments are just ghastly, and I've just not looked at them. I've just almost like completely blocked that thing out. But not everyone has the ability to do that. And it can really, that salience network can really pull us in and tell us that this is really, really important in our lives, until we switch it off and we realize that actually this is where life is. Isn't it crazy how like deeply immersed we can become in a 4x4,
world.
whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see in all areas how much the virtual world is our world now.
Yeah.
A lot of conversations I have with people are talking about social media. A lot of conversations I have are talking about people are talking about things on the internet, things that they see, things that are going on, not in the actual world that we're in. And it's even been interesting to think about, and this is another conversation, but it's just an observation that I've had, is in relationships and dating, people's creation of like not real relationships, like situationships, and sort of like this fantasy world that people are living in a dating perspective, is almost like exacerbated because we live in a virtual reality world anyways. So it's almost like it feels natural to be in more virtual reality world.
Yeah. And you know what's like blows my mind is that when we say we're online dating, I'm not dating because obviously I'm in a relationship, but if I were to be online dating, I see so many of my friends being ghosted or having these things where like it kind of bubbles into something and then it fizzles. And that is the classic dopamine behavior where you get off from the idea of meeting someone, but then when the reality kicks in of actually having to go and do that, people realize that that's not actually what they want, or they got the kick from the buildup.
I mean, can you please talk more about that? So talk about more about dopamine's relationship with dating.
So when we're working on a goal or something, and we know that there's going to be a reward at the end, there's dopamine is present in pursuit of the reward. So during the journey, but then when we receive the reward, yes, I'll go on a date with you, plummets.
Wow.
Yes. There are other chemicals at play like serotonin, oxytocin, which would then be present during that time. But the problem is it requires us to actually hone in on that. Dopamine wants more. So you could easily end up on this kind of hamster wheel where you're like, okay, well, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? Who's the next person that I can text? And the harder it is, the more of a thrill it is. And then the more yeses you get, the less fun it actually is.
Wow. So that almost would explain the rise in social media and phone, because our addiction to the dopamine leads to a culture that is addicted to the dopamine of the beginning stages of dating.
Yeah.
And that would almost explain why people are getting ghosted.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think ghosting is also part of people's communication skills, inability to have conflict resolution and actually say, look, I'm actually not interested. Thank you. Goodbye. Because it's easier to just turn off your phone and ignore someone.
100%.
It's really rubbish.
With breakups, I know in your book you talk a lot about breakups and sort of what's going on from a neuroscience perspective in breakups. What's happening there?
So much. So again, dopamine and other neurotransmitters at play, your brain is in withdrawal. And so you will try and replenish those cocktails of neurochemicals in the brain by reward seeking. That generally comes in the form of maybe drinking, going out more, texting people that maybe you should, or maybe your ex, checking up on them, checking up on the ex's new person, checking up on their family. I actually have a friend, and this is not even that far removed and wild. I think a lot of people will be able to resonate. She got addicted to checking up on her ex's new girlfriend even after they broke up. A year and a half later, she was in a habit of just checking up on what this girl was doing.
Girl, what do you mean? What do you mean? Oh my, this is
Classic.
It's a story I've ever like. I remember in college there was someone, and I was like, me and my friends now we call them pets,
Right.
where it's like your pet where you check on them at night, and it's like becomes an unconscious person that you like check on.
Yeah.
And it's weird. You're just like, what are you doing?
It's weird, but it's also not. Like, I understand exactly why that happens. I can totally see it.
What is it a habit where it's like you get the dopamine hit of what?
Well, you'll be looking for a reward. So this is the other side of the coin with dopamine. So dopamine is released in pursuit of the reward. So if there's a known expected outcome, it will drop when the reward is administered. But it also spikes when there's unexpected reward. So you don't know if you're going to figure out who your ex is seeing. That's why it's so fun going to check on their Instagram, because you may or may not receive this reward. And that is a reward-based learning mechanism that tells you that made you feel good. Let's do it again. So you do it again and again.
And when you say reward, it doesn't need to be positive.
No.
Yeah. Because
it's like, I got the information I needed.
Yes. That's what I remember is like, even when I had like partners that would cheat on me, and I'd be like on my little sleuth game, and I would find the thing. Oh my God.
Listen, I'm a detective through and through.
What do you mean?
My girlfriends will be like, figure this out. I'll be like, I got you. I can figure out who his new girl is just by the likes.
100%. Oh, I was like, first team all-state in basketball when you were 8th grade? Okay, I see you.
Okay, yeah.
Science fair nominee when you were 6? Okay.
I'm very observant, okay?
Yeah, grandpa was a Purple Heart? Okay. Like you can like, I mean, but it's actually kind of crazy with the internet, like all the information you could find.
Yes.
And coming from me being a public figure, it freaks me the frick out what you can find out. It's like...
Yeah, I'm still waiting for like shit to emerge about me.
Oh, I know. Honestly, I've been in the game too long. It would have came out already, to be honest.
Oh, that's good.
People would be finding it.
Okay, cool.
I'm sure for you. People would find
we'll see.
Yeah, literally. So you're looking, from like it's almost like a drug addict looking for a drug when you're going through the breakup. Are there phases from a brain perspective of a breakup?
So you could choose to do the right thing and go cold turkey, or you could wean yourself off.
Smart.
I suggest the cold turkey method because...
And that means cold turkey's no contact.
Yes. Of course, if you can. People have children. I experience, I appreciate that. Limit the contact in terms of other communication and leave it just to, the necessary logistics. But if you don't go cold turkey and you wean yourself off slowly, it can be a longer process. So the cold turkey will hurt more. It will feel rubbish in the beginning and it'll probably be more painful, but it'll be quicker in the long run. It's like ripping that Band-Aid off. Now, the alternative as well, while you're doing either method, is to make sure that you're engaging in reward-seeking activities that are positive for you. Exercise, finding a new hobby. Hopefully that's not dating other people right there and then. And if you are, that's fine, but make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons or, whatever method you want to take. But I would encourage healthy dopamine. And again, there's no morals on dopamine, but do something that makes you feel good about yourself.
Mm-hmm. And just know, so like the awareness that you're going to be looking for that hit or that fix.
Yeah.
Going cold turkey, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
You're going to be looking for that cocktail of emotions.
Yeah.
And if you're going to wean yourself off, sort of watch yourself. I wonder if that's why people in breakups look kind of like go for the ice cream.
Yes.
Go for like those types of things that are providing that feel good.
I'm like, go for the ice cream instead of the axe.
Yeah, honestly.
Just get a little bit temporary fat. Doesn't matter.
I'm a cold turkey girl.
Yeah.
Most of the time they don't want to talk to me. most of the time they're like,
that's another way to do it.
I'm friends with my exes. I'm like, funny thing.
Just burn all your bridges and then you don't have to go cold turkey.
I was like, make them hate you.
I love that.
My last one, we're all good. So at least I was able to do one thing and like make it fine. Okay, so anything else as it relates to neuroscience and breakups that would be helpful for someone that may be experiencing either a long-term, okay, this is the question. Is there a difference between a long-term relationship breakup from a neuroscience perspective and a situationship type breakup?
Hard to say because I think we can all agree that some situationships hurt more.
I know.
I don't
Why do you
really
think that is?
Probably the deeper connection, maybe the possibility of what could have been.
I think that's what it is.
We get hung up on this idea of who this person could have been.
Yeah.
But then with long-term relationships, it's hard because your neural pathways have been ingrained simultaneously to fire in a particular way with that person there. So you wake up and you make 2 coffees. Now you've got to make 1. That's hard for the brain. You maybe take a different route. That's now something new for the brain. Now you don't get to call them after work. That's new for the brain. It's all a big change. So the way that the firing patterns shoot now have to change quite drastically. And that can be quite taxing for the brain and a bit kind of, scary. We want that comfort.
Wow. That's fascinating. So it's almost like the long-term relationship, it's challenging because of the neural pathways that have been grooved in the relationship.
Yeah.
That have been made easy in making 2 coffees. And then for the situationship, it's like the possibility.
Yeah.
I also think it's the fantasy type
Yeah.
thing where you're only seeing a certain aspect of that person, and then your brain's sort of making conclusions positively.
You
for
don't
what it
know
could have
them.
been. Yes.
Yeah. And then you get to know them. And did you remember that film Alfie with what's his name? Sienna Miller and her ex-husband that cheated on her? Jude Law.
Who?
Jude Law.
Yeah. Okay.
And he was saying how he was describing her as a statue, that she looked so beautiful, but the closer he got, the more he started to see the cracks and how imperfect she was.
Jesus Christ.
And that kind of reminded me of that a little bit, not to,
No, 100%.
but,
100%.
just that's kind of how it is sometimes. You see the statue and you're like, wow, you're so beautiful. You could be everything and anything to me. And then you get to know them and you're like, actually, do I really want to be with this person? But in a situationship, you don't get to that point where you get to figure it out because you've just been hung up on the fact that you've just lost the most beautiful statue in Times Square.
100%.
Do you have statues in Times Square? We have them in
do.
England.
They're like people that paint themselves.
Okay, no.
No, but it's the same thing. It's literally the same thing.
You got the gist though.
It's funny that people have negativity bias about themselves, but with other people, they don't as much. Or do they?
Depends. I mean, you could have a negativity bias when it comes to, again, like I said, colleagues or scrolling on other people and automatically, like this is, I mean, a bit of an anecdote, but my partner's ex, they used to share a dog. And they actually at one point, like they blew up. They're like, I'm never letting you see the dog again. And I was like, I became friends with her. Not friends, but to some degree. Because I was like, I'm not going to do that thing that normally happens where I'm like, oh, she's so ugly. She's not. She's so beautiful. She's really, I hope she sees us. I'm not going to tell her about it though. And because of me, he actually got to see the dog again and they became like, kind of amicable in the whole situation, which I thought was quite nice because I could have gone down my usual route where I was like, yeah, fuck her. Like, oh my God, she's crazy. Yeah. But I was like, no. I can see her point.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, it's nice to be at a phase in your development in life. I know, that's like my dream. I'm like, I actually want to meet all my ex's girlfriends and like keep and be like
the ghosts of girlfriends past.
Yeah, honestly, and be like, let's talk about it. Because you're at a point where you're like eventually okay with yourself and you're not looking for the negativity with people. But with a lot of the women in our audience, outside of relationships, something that I wanted to talk to you about was self-sabotage. What's happening when someone is self-sabotaging?
So that's generally your conscious mind and your unconscious brain that are not aligning. Your brain wants to keep you safe. Change is scary. The fear of the unknown is worse than the discomfort of the known, even if the discomfort is no longer serving you. Because we want to stay where it's familiar. The brain wants to keep you safe. Now, in the book, again, I've given you 2 different methods. One is little by little, does the trick. So you can sort of teach yourself, hey, this is not a scary place. And I'm going to give you the creme de la creme, the cherry on top with the penny drops. And you're going to be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I'm going to build you up to it. Or the second method is you can throw yourself in the deep end, shave your head, go traveling, and just make it real scary. And then you have to become accustomed to it because you have to survive. And you'll have a great time on the way as well. But the penny drop is that what tends to happen is that we berate ourselves. Instead of being compassionate and saying, okay, actually, I've been trying to make this change and it's a lot and it's scary. I'm going to be compassionate and congratulate myself for the steps that I've taken. We berate ourselves in an attempt to gain control of the situation. I ate the cookie. Doesn't matter because I'm just going to beat myself up about it later. And that's how I'm going to gain control of the situation. There's nothing wrong with cookies. I'm just using it as an example. I think it's a good one. And so that doesn't serve us. That keeps us stuck. How many times have you done the bad thing? Maybe someone that's trying to stop smoking. How many times you've berated yourself for smoking? How many times has that changed that behavior? Never. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any bad habits, right? What tends to work better is if we congratulate ourselves. Because when we say, hey, you've done really well today. I appreciate that it's been hard doing this change. Like you went from smoking a pack a day to one a day. Girl, that's 19 cigarettes less every single day, because your negativity bias is going to focus on the fact that you're still smoking. And so you're going to berate yourself and you're going to feel shit and you're going to stay stuck in the cycle that's not serving. When we go, hey, I'm smoking 530 cigarettes less per month, we empower ourselves. We go, yes, that's a reward-based learning mechanism because dopamine spikes. We feel good. Let's do that again. Let's smoke less because that makes us feel good. Let's do that again.
So it's basically, I love that. So it's basically like the dopamine is what's supporting you in feeling good because you're giving yourself the positive reinforcement.
Dopamine, serotonin, it would be a cocktail of emotions,
Wow.
but they're all there to help support behavioral change.
Yeah.
But the underlying theme is that we don't do well when we berate ourselves. There's no point to it because your brain is trying to control the situation,
Wow.
but not making any changes.
Yeah. So a part of my practice is a psychotherapy technique called parts work.
Okay.
And it's funny because it's really aligning to this too, because a lot of times when we're self-sabotaging or we're in the practice, in this case with the cigarettes, and you're like, there's a part of you. So it's basically like the belief that the brain can operate in multiple tracks. You can have two truths at once. You can, love that your child's going to college because you get freedom at home, and you can also be sad because you miss your child.
Genusian thinking.
Yes, exactly. What's it called?
Genusian thinking.
Oh, wow.
It's the ability to hold two opposing thoughts in mind without letting the other bother you.
Wow.
Yeah.
And would you say that's like an advanced level of thought? Like that's kind of like
I would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the biggest minds have been thought to have Genusian type thinking.
Genusian thinking.
Yeah.
Wow. And in the self-sabotage example with the cigarettes, it's like when you are able to love and still respect and honor yourself through the process and not expect the perfection, that's when you can really transform. And that's when you can change. Because I think so many of us fail, in quotes, or don't get to our goals because we are expecting that perfection through the process, and we can never really have that.
And that's a classic form of self-sabotage, procrastination. I have a friend who doesn't want to start exercising because she knows she's going to be rubbish in the beginning. I'm like, that is...
I know.
But I get it.
I know.
Because she's a perfectionist and she wants to be able to do it perfectly right in the beginning.
So boring to me.
I started playing the guitar in October, and there was a process where I was like, oh my God, I just want to throw this thing against the wall.
Yeah.
And now I'm at that point where I can actually use it to decompress. But I felt myself having to physically choose every day, do the guitar thing, 10 minutes, and break through, push through the boundaries. There's a whole section in my book called Push Through the Boundaries.
Wow.
Because your brain is going to want to revert back to automatic, what it knows best, which is scrolling instead of playing guitar.
I think that is what stops so many people.
Yeah.
Is that choice to not push through the boundaries of, do I scroll or do I try the new thing? Do I scroll or do I work out? Do I scroll or do I pick up the guitar? Why is it that so many people are choosing the scrolling over the thing that they know in the end will give them more happiness?
Because we have trained ourselves to prefer the immediate reward. So the more you give in to the immediate reward, the more the brain learns that it doesn't have to work for it. It can just get it from scrolling. And the more we choose to do the hard thing, the more we rewire our brain to choose the hard thing over time. So I've spoken about it in a post, and Huberman again has spoken about this on his podcast, but we have an area called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. And the more difficult things we do, the more tenacity and willpower we train. So we actually see that area of the brain increase in size.
Wow.
There's also another area, and this is the research of Carol Dweck. I'm sure loads of people would have heard of her. And she's done growth mindset training. And I actually wanted to talk about this because a lot of her work is how they speak to children in school settings. When they tell children, oh, you're very smart, you're so intelligent, they actually lie about their grades, even when they got 90s. And when they have to choose problems from a list, they choose the easy ones because they want to continue to prove to themselves and those around them that they are smart, and they can't jeopardize that belief. When they tell children that you must have worked so hard at this, you're so good at problem solving, they push themselves, they want to take the difficult decision, they choose problems that are harder, and they don't lie about their results.
Wow.
And that goes to show that how we speak to our children, again, is so important. And when we have a fixed mindset, we attach our identity to the outcome. So when you fail, you think there's something wrong with you. And that's what those children believe, that if they failed at the problem, that there would be something wrong with them as a person.
Wow. Because basically when we're calling them smart, we're calling them like, we're giving them an outcome-based attribute.
Yes.
Rather than like a process-based attribute, which is like the process-based attribute is like you're really good at problem solving.
Yeah.
Which is attributing a good thing to you being able to work with the process of things.
Yeah. And I think it's fine to tell your children that they're smart. It's just making sure that you're not emphasizing this identity-based outcome.
Yeah. Which is kind of what our parents all did for us
Yeah.
what my
I was a
parents did.
sporty one. My sister
You
was
were
a creative one.
sporty.
Yeah.
What was I?
I was Sporty Spice. I wanted to be Scary
I could
Spice.
literally see you being Sporty Spice.
I wanted to be scary my whole life.
I don't know what I was. I don't know. I feel like I was just free floating around.
That's good.
Yeah, I don't know if that's
That's
good.
good. You didn't have a confine. You didn't have a box. That's amazing.
No, I was kind of bumping up against my own things, trying to figure out my identity, which was a lot of my childhood. But what you mentioned when we were talking a minute ago about procrastination. So for a lot of people with procrastination, what's sort of going on there?
So generally when we procrastinate, it's a fear of the outcome. Sometimes it's a fear of the success, fear of failure, depending on what it is. And maybe you don't think you're worthy of the success, so you don't want to put yourself out there in case, I don't know, or you fear that you're going to fail. It could be a trauma response. It could be, I genuinely don't believe this thing as laziness. I think that it's the way that you've either programmed yourself, been programmed, or how you choose the immediate rewards. Actually, sorry, I just realized that those are not balloons. I thought those balloons.
Where?
The light bulbs.
Aren't they sick?
Yeah, they're so amazing. I was like waiting for them.
You thought they were
pop.
balloons?
Yeah.
Stop.
Sorry, my brain that was so ADHD of me. I was like, oh my God.
You know what's literally so weird is right before I was literally thinking about ADHD right a second ago.
That's so funny.
I was just thinking like ADHD in the brain.
That's so funny.
Do you have ADHD?
No, but I have I don't know. I've never been diagnosed, but I have a COMT mutation, which basically is so when we release dopamine from the synapse, there's an enzyme called COMT that breaks it down. And I have a mutation in that gene that basically means I don't make enough of these enzymes. So there's an abundance of dopamine in my brain. It's why I'm so high functioning. I'm like, and I can do like a million things at once. So I have the sort of very, typical etiology to ADHD. So I have to listen to everything on 1.5. I'm like waiting to finish, not your sentences. But like sometimes I'm like, just get to the point. And
Totally.
like I Google the ending of films sometimes because I just can't deal with the suspense. I don't tell my partner. So I'm not going to tell him to listen to this.
I don't want to know what you're like in the bedroom, but just trying to get to the end.
It has been so hot here in New York this summer, hot and humid. And I've just made sure to continue to hydrate properly by adding electrolytes to my water. And I get a lot of questions about this. I feel like I'm talking about hydration quite a bit, especially since I got pregnant and had a baby and I'm still breastfeeding. It is my number one health tip. I just feel so good. And I get tested regularly to see like how my electrolyte levels are and just check on my hydration. And I'm always hydrated, baby. And that's because I am taking Element every single day. I put it in my water. I have about 2 packets of Element in a 24-hour period, sometimes a little bit more because I'm breastfeeding. But y'all, this is an incredible ratio of magnesium, potassium, and salt. And I have just noticed that my energy is really amazing considering I'm a new mom. I noticed that just like all the systems in my body are working so much better. I noticed that I'm not experiencing headaches or just like sluggishness mid-afternoon. So it's my number one. And honestly, it's like reduced my coffee craving by so much. I love their flavors. Orange, I love the citrus, and I also love raspberry, but they have a bunch of really good flavors that I think you will love. love, love, love. So if you are someone who is just drinking plain water, oh my gosh, please let me convert you now. You have to be supplementing with electrolytes. Most of us are deficient, so check on that. Element also has a sparkling beverage that I love. I was walking around with it in my neighborhood the other day, and someone was like, "Is that the new Element sparkling drink?" And I was like, "Yes." Who are you? It's really delicious. But right now, Element is offering our listeners a free sample pack with any order. That's 8 single serving packets free with any Element order. And this is a great way to try all 8 flavors and share Element with a salty friend. You know what I mean? Get yours at drinkelement.com/almost30. That's drinklmnt.com/almost30. This deal is only available through this link. So you must go to drinkelement.com/almost30. That's drinklmnt.com/almost30. Okay, I want you to guess what I am putting in and on basically everything I am eating and drinking. Okay, gave you a second. It is honey, and it is not just any honey. It's called Manukora honey. It is rich, it is creamy, it has this complex flavor I'm obsessed with, and best of all, lots of health benefits. I think the best way to use it is to just take it straight from the spoon first thing in the morning. I do it, it's like just a really nice way to start my day. I get a little burst of energy. I'll also put it in tea. I will put it in my smoothies. I'll put it on ice cream. I'll put it in my yogurt. What's really, really cool is it contains powerful nutrients to support immunity and gut health. The bees collect the nectar from the Manuka tree. It's a tea tree in New Zealand, and the nectar is packed with bioactives, and the honey that is produced has 3 times more antioxidants and prebiotics than your average honey. It's so, so good. And it has a special antibacterial compound called MGO, which also comes from the nectar of the tea tree. What I love is that they third-party test every single harvest for MGO, so they are just on top of it. I think you will love this addition to your everyday. All you need is 1 heaping teaspoon each morning to get the most out of the most amazing bioactives in Manuka. So try Manukora. You're going to love it. It's easier than ever to get Manukora honey. Just head to manukora.com/almost30. That's manukora.com/almost30 to get $25 off the starter kit, which comes with an MGO 850 plus Manuka honey jar. It's amazing. 5 honey travel sticks, a wooden spoon, and a guidebook. I love the wooden spoon. It's so special. I use it every single morning. So that's manukora.com/almost30 for $25 off your starter kit. That's manukora.com/almost30.
Okay, procrastination. Where were we?
So, fear of the outcome,
yes.
fear of success.
How could someone, so sorry, when we say fear of success, some people might be like, I'm not afraid of success. I want success. But how could how could they be afraid of success?
Okay, so I know someone whose parents were hugely successful and then lost everything because they were too quick with their money and it all just kind of like crumbled. So I think that she wants to be successful, but I think that deep down there's a fear that it's all going to fall apart. And so it's easier for her to stay where she is because she's worried that the outcome is going to be what she wants, but then she won't be able to sustain it.
So that would be basically a subconscious that was embedded in her brain, and her brain would be pulling on that subconscious belief to create her new reality now.
Yeah.
That she's unaware of and needs to go back to revisit, to rewire.
Yeah.
And the rewiring would basically be going back in meditation to that moment and what would the rewiring actually be?
So one way to do it is visualization.
Yeah.
Now visualization needs to be specific. So manifestation and visualizing yourself in the future, being a multimillionaire, fine. I am not opposed to any of that. I think it's amazing. It's wonderful. We open up our reticular activating system to allow these kind of things into our lives.
What's the reticular activating system?
It's a system that filters out information that isn't important. So if you believe yourself to be a multimillionaire one day, you'll start to see opportunities that align with this thing that you've been telling yourself. But with visualization studies, it has to be more specific. So one way that she could do this, for example, is to visualize herself making that money And then maybe being good with the money, knowing how to invest it, making sure that she understands what the repercussions are if she doesn't pay tax or whatever it is that's, pertinent in her life, and really feel what it would feel like to be successful.
Wow. Okay. And then when you say feel what it feels like to be successful, is there a relationship to the body in that?
So sometimes feelings of anxiety might come up, and over time you can lessen that emotion so that when you then start to receive the reaping the rewards of the work that you're putting in, it's not associated with panic. Oh my God, run, flight, freeze. Oh my God, we're actually being successful. This is not, something that we're used to.
Yes.
When we visualize, we create a blueprint for how we want our day to go. It works very well with habits. So if you want to start running, you can visualize yourself waking up in the morning, not snoozing, putting on your clothes, putting on your shoes, walking out the door, going for the run. And that seems to work better than visualizing something abstract, which again is fine. There are some people who can do that and have great imaginations. Some people struggle a little bit more. There's something called aphantasia, which is the inability to imagine in your mind's eye something. So if I say to you, can you imagine a red apple?
Wow.
Most people can, but some people just can't.
Wow.
Don't really understand how it works, to be completely honest. The research is still very new, but I struggle to understand how someone couldn't imagine a red apple.
That would be a really limiting way to live.
There's other ways that the brain will come to conclusions. So they'll know what a red apple is, but they just won't be able to see it. So it's not that they can't understand it because they still know what a red apple is. It's just that imagining it is not in that metacognition.
I would love to understand what's going on in the brain there.
Yeah, it's still very new research. And there's a
Right.
lot of emerging research around it, which is,
Wow.
very interesting. But so for some people, it's harder, and we have different levels of how we can imagine. So for some people, it's hard to sort of envision themselves as a future 40-year-old with loads of money. But for some, it's absolutely fun. Like, I absolutely can.
Yes, I'm in Malibu.
Yeah. I'm in the Bahamas as we speak.
Yeah, honestly, I was like, let me just go there for a second. So many people talk about visualization as it relates to manifestation. What is the relationship between the two?
I'm not super well versed with manifestation, but there's definitely an overlap. It's the ability to say what you want for yourself and kind of advocate for yourself, and then start to open up the doors for those possibilities. Because if you didn't do it, you wouldn't know that you could get it, because that opportunity would come and you would be close to it. In the same sense that if I say to you right now, how many green things are in your environment, you start looking, and then I say, okay, how many purple things? And you're going to say, well, I don't know, because I was counting the green things. And if you haven't opened up the opportunity for purple things to be in your environment, you would go through life without seeing them.
Wow. And so it's basically kind of looking for the things that you're wanting to manifest in your life.
Yeah.
Your brain is able to, what's that called?
The
Confirmation bias?
Yes. So your reticular activating system will start to bring that information in the same way that when you were about to buy a blue BMW,
Yes.
you now see blue BMWs everywhere.
Yes.
So you've got that reticular activating system that's part of the salience network that I was talking about, that says to you, this is important. This is what we want to pay attention to. So if you don't say that, the brain isn't going to pay attention to everything in your environment. It's only going to pay attention to what has been reinforced. And that could be a negativity bias. I'm not good enough. I couldn't be rich. I can't own a blue BMW, whatever.
Yeah. What are mirror neurons?
So mirror neurons, we thought that they were actual neurons that would mimic what someone else was doing.
Yep.
They've turned out to be a little bit disappointing.
Wow.
But we do have synchronization, so brainwave synchronization. Like, we are probably on a wavelength right now. And not only that, but empathy centers will light up as well. So if you tell me a sad story about yourself, my pain centers will light up as well to say, well, that's quite painful.
Yeah.
Probably not to the degree of the pain that you're feeling, but to some degree. Psychopaths don't have that. So they can revel in other people's pains and not actually feel it. But when they have to talk about their own pain and their pain centers light up, then they will be able to feel that. So there's a disconnect from being able to connect with other people.
And empaths are highly sensitive people, actually have more sensitive mirror neurons.
There's an area of the brain, the supramarginal gyrus, that can actually sever the empathy, in the sense that you can still feel empathy towards other people and feel their pain, but not let it upset you for the rest of the day and take it home with you. So I would imagine that a good therapist probably has a very active supramarginal gyrus where it can block out that pain so that it doesn't affect them at the end of the day. They'll still be empathetic. They'll still feel your pain and they'll still be able to support you, but it doesn't then infiltrate. Whereas I think I would struggle. I think I'll struggle
Cutting
to be
it
a
off.
therapist. Yeah.
It's interesting because I'm so sensitive, such an empath, but my work in the past couple years has been cutting off. And actually, I'm really grateful because I work one-on-one with women and I do retreats and stuff, and the work is super, super deep. And I can be in choice of how in the pain or experience I am, where before I couldn't be in choice about it.
And that is a testament to brain plasticity, isn't it, in itself? Because you've been able to train yourself to be able to disconnect when needed, to protect yourself.
100%.
It's a protective mechanism because if you didn't have that, you would be in pain every single night, worrying about other people's problems.
And I wouldn't be a teacher.
Yeah.
You know, you can't really be a facilitator if you're matching
Exactly.
energy all the time.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, how can I be here?
Yeah.
And it's like the heart is connected, but I'm not
Yeah.
like connected in a way where I'm matching.
I know what you're saying. And also you're, with that brainwave synchronization, helping them reach your level to some degree so that you're not, I don't want to say stooping down.
It's entrainment, right?
Yeah. So, you know, like when you're in an argument with your partner, you could rise up to the occasion and, you know, it becomes like a snowball effect where you end up just shouting at each other. Or you could take a breath and then they'll start to mimic you after a while where they start calming down. And sometimes we need to hold space for those people so that we can help them regulate back down. And I'm not saying take the punches, you know, don't be the punching bag, but we can sometimes be that person for the other person that needs us in that moment in time. And that's what you're doing as a facilitator.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's huge for relationships. Like you kind of have to take turns on that because a lot of times it's and this could be a brain thing, but I always see it as like the inner child. It's like the inner child is active, kind of desiring connection, desiring something. A need is not being met. And it's sort of being communicated in a way where it's not maybe perfect. It's kind of yelling, screaming, like the complaining. And it's like holding the love and really seeing and addressing the feelings first and then like the facts later.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm like, just learned that on the podcast before. What are some what are your favorite very simple ways that people can support themselves in living a happier, more fulfilled life from a neuroscience perspective?
Self-trust.
Wow.
Keep those promises to yourself because if you can't trust yourself, then how can you expect others to trust you?
Yeah.
When you say you're going to go to the gym at 6 a.m., go to the gym at 6 a.m. When you say you're going to stop eating at 7 p.m., stop eating at 7 p.m. Obviously requires us to be realistic with ourselves. Is going to the gym at 6 a.m. every single day of the week really, what's the word? Yeah, realistic.
Yeah.
Are you still hungry? Are you eating enough that you don't need to eat it after 7 p.m.? You know, it's just these kind of questions that we need to pose. But when you say you're going to do the thing, when you've got the deadline, do that.
Yeah.
Because when we reinforce self-trust, we reinforce self-confidence. We've got self-confidence. We can pretty much get through anything in life.
Yeah. And it becomes your new normal.
Yeah.
You know, I think, yeah, it's almost like, you know, I see again from like more like the therapeutic spiritual perspective where it's like, just loving yourself enough to know that like you're going to and worth it to do what you say and like prioritizing that experience. Because I think so often maybe it's a worthiness thing where people don't see themselves worthy enough of following through on their actions or they're not motivated or maybe it's a dopamine thing. I don't know.
So start small. Start with the little things. You know, sometimes I joke and I'm like, ooh, free dopamine because I'll tick things off like got out of bed.
Love the free dopamine. That's insane.
Do it. Congratulate yourself for the little things, you know, it's a small wins. Because in the same way that we can focus on the negative things and we go on a downward spiral with that negativity bias, I'm not good enough, confirmation, you see, I really am not good enough. We can do the opposite where we go on an upward spiral and we go, ooh, well done for putting your shoes on today. Well done for making coffee without sugar. Well done for leaving the house on time. And then all of a sudden, we're on this upward spiral that makes us feel good about ourselves.
Wow. And then there's momentum.
Yeah.
In James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, it kind of talks about that. So in the act of building new habits, it's actually really good to have visual representations of your progress.
Okay.
So whether that's the gold star, whether that's
Yeah.
like moving a paper clip from one jar to the other.
Yeah.
So it's like encouraging your positive momentum in small ways
Yeah.
with actions that you're actually seeing in the world.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And so this is why, having a little to-do list can be really helpful as well, because once you tick something off, you feel good, that visual representation. Then you want to do more because you're like, well, hell yeah, I felt good about that. So I'm just going to keep going. And then next thing you know, you're doing the task, you're doing the essay, you're doing the report because you know that you've built up this momentum to that positivity for wanting to do the work.
I love that. What is, last thing, what was the video that went viral that you're talking about?
It's talking about alcohol in the brain.
What is the deal with alcohol in the brain?
So we've been told that alcohol to some degree is good for you.
Excuse me?
Wine.
Who said that?
Wine.
Okay.
Unfortunately, and this is one study, I appreciate that. And I think there will be a lot more studies to come after this. This was published in 2022. Maybe there'll be more studies to come for sure. But what they saw was that when individuals drank 7 units per week, which I know doesn't sound like a lot. You're like, 7 units sounds like a lot. 1 standard glass of wine is 2 units.
Wow.
So you only need to have 4 of those and you're over the limit already on how much effect it has on the brain. And it has a negative effect. The more you drink, the more units you drink, the more neurodegeneration we see in the brain. And 7 units, again, doesn't sound like a lot, but if you have 2 glasses of wine with a friend on the weekend and then another 3 on a Sunday with your family, you're well over that limit. Now, I don't want anyone to stop drinking or to think, oh God, Nicole is such a bore. It's about making those informed decisions so that when we're 80, we don't go, hey, I wish someone told me this,
100%. What else is alcohol's effect on the brain? Is there anything else besides that?
So it basically affects the gray matter and the white matter volume in the brain. Now, the gray matter volume is responsible for short, nearby information in the brain. And then the white matter tracts are responsible for conducting information from, say, the frontal cortex to different areas of the brain. So that kind of faster communication all the way through to into your periphery. And there's a degeneration in both parts of that brain. Now, there was a big argument around neurogenesis. And that is that people were saying that, yes, the brain does create new neurons when I said that it doesn't. There's very limited data to show that we can potentially create new neurons in one area of the brain, well, 2 areas within the hippocampus. And the problem is that we don't really know what the clinical relevance to that is. We don't know if it's at a fast enough rate to undo the alcohol-induced neurodegeneration. And not only that, what we've seen is that the neurodegeneration happens on a brain-wide scale. So it's not just the hippocampus, it's the neocortex as well.
Wow. So your whole brain is affected by it.
Yes. And, we know that because when we look at the brains of alcoholics, they quite literally shrivel up.
Wow.
Now, can you recover? Is it going to have an effect? Is it going to lead to dementia if you drink regularly? Other factors will be at play. You may be somebody who drinks every single day. There were so many people saying my grandmother drinks every day and she's absolutely fine. My grandmother was actually the same, but she had no stress. She was active. But we just don't know. And again, I just want people to know. I don't want them to be like, oh, I wish someone told me that smoking was really bad for me.
I just feel like it's so annoying when people like see something and they're like, but this one thing about my life.
Oh my God. The best one is when they're like, people in the blue zones drink wine every day. And I'm like, yeah, because they live in the blue zones.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you live in the blue zones?
There's so many more aspects of the blue zones.
They don't have office jobs in the blue zones. I'm sure they have some office jobs in the blue zones.
I just think also too, it's like just living and being like, I knew this one person that did this one thing that like isn't having this experience. It's like, hey, this is new research that I'm talking about.
I mean, the UK Biobank study was looking at like 36,000 brains. So,
wow.
It's a pretty robust study. I mean, without fault, it has its own issues, of course.
Alcohol is a toxin.
Exactly. It's just starting to show us a picture of what it is that it's doing to our brains.
And hey, if you want to drink, just drink.
Yeah.
You don't need to like fight with me about this.
Exactly.
Like just do your thing. It's like obviously you have beef with yourself drinking. So you're here in the comments like
triggered.
Just drink. But I think maybe you have a more UK audience.
No.
Really?
Yeah. 48% of my following is US. But I think that video went viral, 6 million views. I'm sure. I didn't even know. It's not my video. I was tagged in it as a collaborator, so I actually can't look at the insights.
Wow.
So I don't know where most of these people are coming from.
Yeah, wow.
But I would imagine that it's hit everyone, all over the world. But I think it just shows how emotionally attached we've become to drinking and that culture.
Yeah.
And again, I get it. I completely understand. It feels weird to go to a festival without having a drink. But again, it's just about bringing that awareness into these conversations so that we can make informed decisions.
Yeah. I feel like the conversation around alcohol shifted so much. I think maybe also I'm in a bubble in LA. And so LA culture is a little bit different. It's a little, it's different. But I feel like for the most people that I know don't drink.
Well, anecdotally, I would say the same. And what's really interesting is I have friends who work in the city, bankers, financiers, and they will say that the younger generation aren't going to the pub with them after work. They actually go to the gym. So I do think that it's shifting and it's changing, and that, we're being more mindful around drinking. And that's perfect, because my biggest thing as well is like, that's how they keep you hooked. That's how the system keeps you sick. It tells you that alcohol is amazing. They advertise it in everything. It's like, and of course, alcohol is a good fun. That it's a long-standing joke. There's no real story started with a salad or whatever. I mean,
that's hilarious. No real story start with a salad. That's funny.
But, they are. I stayed in a really dodgy motel, and I'm going to be talking about that for the rest
100%.
of the week.
I'm like, it's kind of like, yeah, I've had some stories with alcohol, but like a lot of them, I'm like.
And I think exactly, we just need to start shifting away from that story that says, oh, you're boring if you don't drink, or she must be so fun at a party, which is one of the longest standing jokes in that comment section. Like, no one wants to invite me to the party because I'm boring.
I mean, that's like, it's sometimes it's so hard for me to go back to that mentality of even thought, because I'm like, the way that I grew up in the Midwest, people drink.
Yeah.
Like, it is crazy. So, but I'm like, oh, when I saw people drinking, it was not fun looking.
No.
People are completely not even present or there. It's like they're time traveling.
Yeah.
It's buying time. It's like non-presence. It's like, how could you actually be having fun I don't know.
Yeah. It's really interesting. People ask me about blackouts, how they don't remember things.
Wow.
And what's really interesting is that it isn't that you forgot the memory, is that your brain didn't encode that memory in the first place.
Whoa.
So you're literally going on autopilot, I suppose, without really registering anything that's going on around you.
Whoa.
It's just crazy.
That's frightening.
Yeah.
I think about now too how dangerous it was.
Yeah.
I think that's like the getting older type thing where you're like, now I'm in the phase where I'm like, wow, that's dangerous.
Can't believe I did that.
Yeah, honestly. But in your 20s, you're like, this is fun. Like, I'll go do your thing. But I'm like, that was so dangerous and not interesting. And maybe it's a controlling part of me, but I'm like, I want to be in reality.
Yeah.
I don't want to leave reality. Like, I enjoy and love reality. It's not, something that I want to escape.
And that's the magic word, enjoy reality. Because a lot of people don't enjoy their reality.
I know.
So it's an escapism. It's fun to be drunk because you don't have to think about your problems.
Totally. Do you think that would be then shifting to like a unconscious state would be to leave reality?
What do you mean?
So when we're like someone's leaving reality and like not able to be present, what's happening?
Was that as in like when they're drinking?
Yeah, or just even in life when they're like numbing out.
Yeah, so I mean, we've got forms of dissociation, which is a safety mechanism. It's protecting you from your environment, from yourself, from your thoughts. And it's a learned behavior to keep you safe.
Wow.
So that's one form of dissociating, which is will need clinical intervention. And then there's that kind of classic, I'm going to go on my phone and just drown out that internal thinking, because we've got an area of the brain called the default mode network. Now that's responsible for internal mind wandering, also creativity, but also ruminative thoughts, negative self-referential information. When we engage in outward tasks like scrolling, like keeping ourselves busy, like talking to your friends, we're not engaged in that default mode network. You're not pondering your 9-year-old life right now while you're in conversation with me. It's keeping you busy from your internal thoughts. Yeah. But when you step away and you start washing the dishes, whatever has been on automatic on loop, that's when it will be prevalent.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Which is why sometimes people don't want to be alone.
Yeah. And it's why people keep themselves busy and they're workaholics, because they don't want to sit with their own thoughts.
I've done that.
Yeah. But then the thoughts come at night and then you're lying in bed and you're like, I can't escape them now, but I need to sleep.
I know. I'm so grateful that I don't have that anymore. I literally lay down and like fall right asleep. What are you excited about right now? Like any new research or anything that you're working on that you're just super jazzed about?
I am super jazzed about the book and just taking a break from everything.
How long were you writing it for?
6 months for the first draft, 3 months for the editing
That's
process.
fast,
Yeah.
babe. That's fast.
Yeah. But I already had a lot of the information in my head. Like I already knew a lot of the research. I already knew a lot of, that's what I said.
Yeah.
If I were to write a new book, I'd probably need longer because I'd need to overhaul an entire body of research.
Yep.
I am excited about just living slow for a bit
Yeah.
and just enjoying the process with the book.
Yep.
Because for a long time, I was like attaching myself to the outcome. Will I become bestseller? Like I need to do this to be in the seller list, and just kind of trust in that process that if the book is good and the PR is obviously good, then it will go. It will go as it need. And I just need to just trust the process a little bit.
Yeah.
It's been a big challenge for me, but it's also been quite refreshing.
Yeah. With books, it's like, it's just such a vulnerable process because you're like, oh, you're putting yourself out there. Like,
Yeah, people are going to read it.
Yeah.
Like, those
But
are
I
my
mean,
words.
it's amazing. The cover's amazing. Like, I can't wait to dig into it. I'm actually getting my first copy now. And I love the way that you structured it. And you mentioned like, it's going to be perfect.
Oh, good. Oh, so Louise is going to send you one.
Yeah.
My publicist. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Because I brought that in case but I knew she would. She's
She
great.
better.
Okay. Yeah,
So
no,
the book is Rewire, Break the Cycle,
Rewire.
Alter Your Thoughts, and Create Lasting Change. And then where else can people find you?
Nicole's Neuroscience on Instagram. Now, what's funny is I get so many messages from people saying, I just realized that your surname is not Neuroscience.
That's amazing. You're like, what do you think I am?
Yeah, they think
Some
I'm
sort of
Nicole
robot?
Neuroscience. I'm like, cool.
Yeah, I literally, you're like, my parents married Mr. and Mrs. Neuroscience.
People saw my name and they're like, oh, you have a surname. I'm like, yeah.
Dude, that's how crazy the internet is.
I know. It's
Like-
amazing. So yeah, Nicole's Neuroscience on Instagram. Hopefully you'll be starting a YouTube soon. And if I do,
Yay.
you'll be one of my guests on my
I
podcast.
would love to. Podcast time.
Yay.
All right, honey. This was amazing. I was like taking it all in. My little brain is just going. We love you guys. Enjoy the book, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye. Thank you so much, Nicole. Again, that was Nicole Vignola, Nicole Neuroscience on Instagram on Almost 30 Podcast.
And thank you all for listening, for subscribing to the show. You can listen on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Make sure you're following and subscribed. And be sure to listen to Morning Microdose, our clip show. So these are 5 to 15-minute episodes that you can listen to first thing in the morning to start your day off right. You can subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much for being with us on this ride. We love you, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Love you guys. See you soon. Bye.